Another category is furs and jewelry. List your watches separately. The Arizona exemption is one for each of you, up to a value of $100. List wedding engagements rings separately, and list all of your other non-costume jewelry, which is not exempt in Arizona, separately. Before you go nutty as a fruitcake about your wedding ring, read my discussion of wedding rings and whether you get to keep them. The short answer is simple here in Arizona. You get to keep them if you want to keep them, and you're willing to do what it takes to keep them. Read the post. List firearms or other hobby equipment. Just itemize them with a description. Do not list gun, because the trustee can't tell what gun is worth and whether it's exempt. For instance, list Smith & Wesson .38 hammerless snub-nose revolver, stainless, 25 years old, value $250, or whatever else is a correct and precise description. Ditto with exercise equipment. The trustee needs to be able to tell whether your weight set is from Sears and is made of plastic and concrete and is rotting in the backyard, or is an Olympic standard weight set worth $15,000. List interest in insurance policies. The trustee wants to know what the face amount of the policy is and whether there's any cash surrender value. List them all, of course. Annuities. If you have one, list it. If you don't know what it is, you probably don't have one. Interest in educational IRAs. List them. Interest in other IRAs and pensions. Most of those are exempt. List them anyway. Stock or interests in any business. If you own any stock, no matter whether it's worth very little or nothing, you list it. Ditto interest in businesses. Interest in partnerships or joint ventures. You got them, you got to list them. Government or corporate bonds. If you have these, why didn't you sell them to pay your legal fees? But list them if you got them. If you sell them to buy food or to make a mortgage payment, make sure you list that transfer on the rest of your schedules. Another category is alimony or support that you're entitled to but have not yet received. List it. List any other debts owed to you, even if you don't ever expect to collect the debt. Even if you think it can't be collected, list it. List future interests, life estates, special rights or powers. If you don't know what these are, you probably don't have them. If you have them, list them. Another category is death benefit plans, life insurance policies, or trusts. List them if you got them. Another category is unliquidated claims. That means you have a claim against somebody else and you can't tell exactly how much it's worth, and that goes there. For instance, if you have a wrongful death claim against somebody and you can't precisely calculate the amount of those damages, that goes in here. Patents, copyrights, or other intellectual property. List it if you got it. Value it as precisely as you can. If you've been trying to sell your patent for a decade, it may not be worth a lot, but estimate the value as closely as you can and list it. Another category is licenses, franchises, or general intangibles. List if you got. Another category is a customer list from any business you operated in the last 8 years, assuming that you've got it. Getting a value for this will be challenging. Note that if you owned a corporation, the customer list is probably owned by the corporation and not by you. You own the stock in the corporation. Another category is automobiles, trucks, trailers, or other vehicles. The online Blue Book may help you. Trustees in Arizona are generally looking for high private party values, excellent quality, not trade-in values. There are a lot of other sites you may use if you have trouble with the Blue Book, including carquotes.com and edmunds.com. Another category is boats and motorboats and boat accessories. List them if you got them. Another category is aircraft or accessories. Don't ask me where to find the value for a used wooden Fokker propeller. I don't know either. And a Fokker is an airplane. Another category is animals. Note that most animals are either exempt or worthless. Bankruptcy trustees generally don't want to take custody of assets that eat or require care or bite. Horses are sometimes a big issue, especially emotionally. If you have horses, find out how much they're actually worth, however you do it, and then convince me and Heidi that you're correct before we file. Another category is any other personal property that isn't listed above. Note that if you have a big collection of hand tools that you use in your job, those need to be inventoried at value and valued at replacement value. There's a $2,500 tools of the trade exemption in Arizona, and obviously we can double that if you're married. Now we get to talk about the debts section. You need to list all of your creditors. When I say all, I really mean all, including your relatives who you don't want to know about your bankruptcy. You have to list them. Or that guy who's suing you, who you think isn't entitled to a dime. You got to list him. If you don't list them, they won't go away, and then after the bankruptcy, you'll get sued by somebody you didn't list, and it will sadly be your fault. No kidding. And for that matter, it's even a crime to fraudulently and intentionally fail to list creditors. Remember this practice pointer. Pull 3 credit reports on yourself, and those credit reports will act as a safety net for you. They aren't going to list all your debts. You're going to look at your own records. But if you've forgotten about a creditor, the credit reports are a safety net for you. For that matter, if you pull a credit report and see that somebody stole your identity and racked up debt, you're better off listing those debts in your schedules as disputed than failing to list them and trying to prove after the bankruptcy that you didn't own them. I'm begging you now. I don't want any of my clients to be sued after a bankruptcy because there's relatively little I can do to help you. It happened to a beautiful couple who were clients of mine. They were sued for $100,000 on a note just after their discharge was entered. I asked them what happened, and they looked me square in the eye and they said, "We forgot about that one." Do not let that happen to you. What address should you use for your creditors? All of them. I'd rather have one creditor with 5 different addresses than for you to leave out the correct address. In specific, include the addresses for every creditor that sent you mail within 90 days of filing. And there are usually 2 or 3 addresses on every bill, so list them all. You must list all the account numbers for each of the creditors. And if there's a collection agency for a creditor, I want you to separately list that collection agency and note that they may be using their own internal account number. As to who is responsible for the debt, in Arizona the general rule is that if you incurred the debt while you were married, it's a joint debt. If you weren't married at the time the debt was incurred, you can indicate on the schedules that it was incurred by either the husband or wife, as the case may be. The date incurred usually relates to when you opened the credit card account, and that date may show up on your credit report. As to the amount due, that's the least important number that you're going to be listing. The amount due is a moving target because the creditor is constantly adding interest and fees. The type of debt indicates why you owe the money, and the answer may be house or car or credit card or medical bill or general unsecured debt if it's a credit card and you can't remember what you purchased. List any collection agency that sent you a letter as an assignee of the original creditor. List any law firm that contacted you or sued you as an assignee of the original creditor. Also list co-debtors as creditors. They may very well have a right to sue you if you defaulted on the debt. You won't have enough room to enter all of the addresses for all the lawyers and collection agencies on some creditors. List the lawyers and collection agencies as, quote, collection agency for blank or attorney for blank, if you don't have enough room to list them otherwise. The exact amount you owe to the creditors is the least important number on your schedules. Do the best you can to estimate the moving target, but it's always changing and everybody knows that. Dependents. You'll be listing everybody who is your dependent. That is partly because of the means test. From the perspective of the means test, the more dependents, the better. Note that unless you listed the individual as a dependent on your income tax return, you may not be able to benefit from them on the means test analysis, or you may. It's a slightly different analysis. Income. You'll be required to disclose all income you and your spouse have received for the last 6 months for the means test purposes. Note that you'll also need to scan and email your last 6 months of pay stubs to Heidi, the bankruptcy angel, so she can check your numbers. If you received other income in the last 6 months, list it. You'll also be filling out information including your occupation, employer's name, employer's address, how long you've been employed, and a current pay stub. You'll also need to fill out information about amounts you earned in the prior 2 years, both from your employment and from other sources. Expenses. You're going to be listing all your normal expenses that are normal monthly living expenses. Make sure you list as well expenses that you only pay on an annual, quarterly, or semi-annual basis. It's an extensive section, and you'll need your checkbook and check registers and a calculator to help you with this section. Another section is financial affairs. You'll be listing the following sorts of information: payments to any unsecured creditor totaling more than $600 in the last 90 days. Debts repaid to relatives, partners, friends, or other insiders within the last 12 months, so that the trustee can sue them for what's called an insider preference. Lawsuits you've been involved in over the last 12 months. Note that in Arizona, if you file a Chapter 7, any suit you have relating, for instance, to a personal injury claim belongs to the bankruptcy estate for the benefit of your creditors. Property taken by a creditor or money garnished by that creditor within the last 12 months. Property that was repossessed or foreclosed on or was returned voluntarily to the seller within the last 12 months. Rights signed over to a creditor within the last 4 months. You'll report as to whether a fiduciary took custody of your property within the last year. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, it probably didn't happen. You'll report losses due to fire, flood, theft, or other disaster, or gambling within 12 months. You'll report money paid for debt counseling or to any attorney, including me, within 12 months. Do not press complete until you are really done filling out the forms. When you press complete, our office gets an email telling that you're done filling out the forms. After that, do not try to enter additional information because it won't work well. It will mess everything up. Email Heidi at my office and tell her about the additional information or corrections that you need to make. Now, sit back and relax. You've done a bunch of work and you deserve a break. Relax as much as you can. Do not expect that you will get an immediate, breathless call from my office congratulating you. This was a ton of thankless work. Welcome to my world. Feel free to email me and Heidi and let us know that you're done with Phase 1 and that you'd like to file in a month or so prior to the trustee's sale in your house, or after you've gotten your tax refund and spent it on food so your children don't starve, and after you've done the spend down and have spent your most recent paycheck on mortgage, food, car payment, or whatever you spend your check on with a debit card. Do not plan to punch send and file your bankruptcy on the next day. It ain't happening. There are people ahead of you, and we have to review the darn thing to make sure it's fairly safe to file for you. We now have to do the real work of reviewing it and seeing how much you'll lose to the trustee as non-exempt property or how much you'll be buying back from the trustee. We'll also need to see what crazy, obvious mistakes you made, like listing car washes as an expense, but not listing a car, for instance. Thank you very much.